Hi everyone, my name is Jason Sony and welcome to another Elliott Wave Traders Classroom lesson. In today's lesson, I want to discuss a scenario that played out on a token called Pepe. And the topic is how to make adjustments to a corrective wave count when it's negated. So there are going to be times, no matter how confident you are in a particular wave count, where there's going to be market movement events, as was the case with this particular scenario. And you're going to need to make adjustments to the wave count. So what I want to do is just go through some of the stages that I went through and some of the adjustments that I made. And I'll just try and run through the scenario and what I was thinking at the time, and we'll bring it up to date and show you the current wave count. So the market movement event was when Iran launched a bunch of missiles to Israel. So that was around the 13th of April. So prior to that actual market movement event, I was actually suggesting that Pepe was taking the form of a triangle, so red wave 4 triangle here. And I figured probably likely completed this green wave C, so A, B, C, a little bit higher for wave D, followed by a pullback for wave E. That should remain above the wave C extreme at 635. And you'll notice that I've got a couple of alternate wave counts. Now, one of the reasons why I like to consider other alternate wave counts is there are going to be times when things just go wrong. Like I say, sometimes you can be really confident in a wave count, and I've been very confident at times, and things just go wrong. And in this case, obviously, nobody could really foresee that Iran launched some missiles on Israel. So obviously that was a market mood event that I didn't foresee and I wasn't really counting on. So regardless of the market movement event, I'm just going to show you how I go about trying to pick up the pieces and make adjustments. So a lot of the times, particularly in corrections, I'll have an alternate count running side by side my preferred count. And the reason being is that I want to react straight away and make adjustments to the overall bigger picture idea. So in this case with Pepe, I'd had a couple of scenarios that I was working with, and the initial idea that I was going to suggest, if Pepe moved below 635, was to argue that it was still in this green wave C. So as long as any downside remained above the wave A extreme at 582, then we could still suggest a triangle. Now, considering the decline, I think this looks more like a 3, although you can label it as a 5. And this 3-wave looking move, a lot of 3-wave looking movements. The fact that we were considering a 4th wave would suggest a good pattern would likely be a triangle. Very common pattern to see in the 4th wave of an impulse. However, as the market move event kicked in, i.e. Iran launched a bunch of missiles on Israel, we saw a breakdown below the key level at 582. So obviously the triangle itself is negated, but you'll notice that I've actually added on let's just bring that back, added on a alternate scenario which argued for a much deeper pullback. Now bearing in mind we're still arguing for a 4th wave, but because I'd already considered alternate ideas, and if the triangle was to be negated, I would likely switch to either a double zigzag or a zigzag, depending on how you wanted to cap this initial decline. Now, like I say, you can label this as a 3 or a 5, depending on how creative you get. But the point I was really trying to refer to when I was mentioning this idea at the time was that I was just going to count a three-legged decline. So this measurement here at 418, what I've shown in green, is basically the length of this decline that I've labeled as wave A added on to the end of wave B. And that gives us a potential projection where a three-leg decline could actually end for a deeper pullback for wave 4. So once we got the decline below 582 and negated the triangle, then obviously I was considering the deeper correction for red wave 4, i.e. a move towards 418. And considering the drop that we saw, this steep drop, this is the drop that's on the Iran-Israel news, this initial drop here. So obviously it's taken out 582. So first off, the triangle's negated, but then you need to consider other options. So I'm switching back to this three-leg decline. And because we got this steep drop, this looked more like a third of a third wave. So I was considering that this is probably going to unfold as an impulse from 1918. So then we start to use key levels. So obviously, if we're working the idea of an impulse, we know that wave 4 cannot move into the territory of wave 1. So we should not see an overlap with the wave 1 extreme at 635. So because they're labeling this as a 5, then obviously we need to label this as a 5 in order to argue for a zigzag for red wave 4. So we've gone from a triangle to a zigzag. However, this is the important bit that I really want to emphasize, is that even though we've seen a market movement event, and at the time, obviously it could be considered quite fearful, it's still within the realms of the bigger picture idea, i.e. red wave 4. So we've just gone from a triangle to a larger correction. In this case, I'm considering a zigzag for red wave 4. So the key level now at this stage is 635, which is the wave 1 extreme. So as long as any downside remains below that level, then we can consider that new lows are likely going to be seen back below 382 to complete an impulse from these wave B extremes at 918 to complete a larger zigzag decline for red wave 4. However, what actually happened is that the market started to rally, and it actually took out that key level. Let's bring the prior chart back. Actually took out that level at 635. So that then forced me back to suggesting that a low actually could be in place. So instead of labeling this decline, that I labeled it as green wave A, i.e. a 5-wave move, I went back and suggested that it was a zigzag. And like I say, it's quite ambiguous. There's a couple of ways you can label this, depending on what unfolded here. So if this unfolded as a 5, then you would need to label this as a 5. You can't label that as a 3-3-5 because wave B doesn't meet the requirement of a flat. So if we're going to work a 5 here, as I was suggesting at the time, then we'd need to label this as a 5. So this becomes a 5, 3, and a 5 for a zigzag. However, as you can see, it took out the what was the wave 1 extreme, which is now labeled as wave A of a zigzag. So that initial drop that I've labeled as a 5, you can actually label that as a 3. So you can label this as a zigzag for W, this as an X wave, and then A, B, C, which is invariably what I end up doing. So all through this process, I was strictly focused on the price action and the pattern that I thought at the time was likely unfolding. Now, as you can see, the market negated the zigzag scenario and then basically forced us into considering the idea that actually the correction is complete. So what ended up starting as a possible triangle got negated. Then I switched to a zigzag based on the price action. And then obviously ultimately I've switched to a double zigzag because the zigzag scenario got negated, i.e. I moved back above the key level at this particular stage, which was 635. Now, there are going to be times when, again, no matter what no matter what you do or how confident you are in a particular pattern, the market will just do something that you don't expect. And it's your job to literally interpret the price action and make some adjustments. Now, you can either make that on the fly. I don't personally like to do that. I prefer to have game plan in place. And one of the reasons why I like to keep alternate counts on tap is I can switch to other accounts straight away rather than having to deal with the scenario there and then. Because a lot of the times you'll be involved in a market moving event and you can't really focus on the market, particularly if you've got erratic price action. That wasn't the case so much here, because once you got the drop, we did see a little bit more downside, but it started to slow up, which was suggesting that it was at the tail end of a correction. So even though the actual triangle got negated, I still focused on the overall decline from the March high as a correction. Although it was deeper than I anticipated, I still kept my focus with the overall decline from the March high as a correction, and it didn't turn bearish. So getting back to the updated wave count now, as you can see, it continued to push higher, although we've made some adjustments. So this is where we left it here after the break of this swing low. So obviously this is suggesting that a low is in place, considering the price action. I was thinking this is more like a third of a third wave and not a fifth wave. But again, we've had to make some adjustments. So rather than argue for further upside for what I thought at the time was purple wave 3, actually ended up just being a 5-wave move. So with it, this being an extended fifth wave. So blue wave 5 or purple wave 3. And the corrective pullback, similar to the bigger picture idea, suggested that once this correction was done, we're going to see a resumption to the upside and complete what I think is a 5-wave move for an impulse from these lows at 392. Corrections can be difficult at times, and obviously depending on your own experience will help guide you as to what is unfolding. But even somebody such as myself, who's got a lot of experience with corrections, can get blindsided. And the key to trying to keep you on the right side of the trend is basically just using key levels and counting what you see. So, going back to this particular scenario where I was arguing for a zigzag and this being an impulse from 918, considering what I saw, and the fact that obviously you've got this impulsive looking downside, the likelihood is if I saw that again, I'd still count it that way, even though it ended up being wrong. I'm of the opinion of just counting what you see and judging the price action on its merits. So if a particular wave count is standing out, count it as you see it, not what you want. So even though I was looking for a little bit lower, it wasn't the case, and I had to make some adjustments. So each time that I've actually made adjustments, the market has basically told me that I'm wrong, but I need to consider other options. So on the downside, we got a break of 582 to negate the triangle. Then obviously we've got this scenario where I'm working a zigzag, and obviously that ended up proving to be wrong. And then I've had to literally be forced into arguing for a double zigzag based on the trend and the move to the upside. So once it took out that low and this impulsive looking upside, so it's basically telling you a message. So I found that being on the right side of the market based on the price action, most times it'll be in your favor. So if you count what you see and count on the merits of the price action, the likelihood is you'll end up being correct in your assessment of what is unfolding. But there are going to be times, no matter how confident you are in a particular wave count, you're just going to be wrong. And that's just something that is part and parcel of Elliott wave trading. As you've seen, essentially I got 2 wave counts, even though I was confident in the wave counts, but I was wrong both times. And basically I've had to make adjustments a couple of times and then get myself back on the trend. Now, with the current updated wave count, I am now considering this to be a 5-wave move into this high. Or you might see a little bit higher, but we can clearly count a 5-wave move here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So after a 5-wave move, we generally see a corrective pullback. Well, that's obviously what we assume is going to happen. I don't think this is going to end up being something really bullish, such as a 1, 2, 1, 2. So this would be the start of a third wave. I do think this is probably a 5-wave move, probably ended at this high. So what I'm looking for is just a corrective pullback. And basically it says after a 5-wave move, we should see a corrective pullback. Now, sometimes you might see a relatively shallow pullback depending on the overall bullish or bearish theme or sentiment to a market. But in this case, if you look at the daily picture, I think the correction is done for this red wave 4. With this 5-wave rally for what I think is green wave 1 of red wave 3, a corrective pullback for red wave 2, which generally is around the 50 to 61.8% retracement of a first wave. So if we get a corrective pullback, possibly tag somewhere around that 700 area, or maybe even the prior 4th wave at 596. I think that could offer a buying opportunity. And one of the great things about Elliott is that we know where we're wrong. So in this case, our key level now is 392, which is the end to the correction where I've labeled this red wave 4. So 5-wave rally, what we're labeling as green wave 1, corrective pullback for green wave 2 will set the stage for further upside to complete waves 3, 4, and 5 of a still developing impulse for red wave 5. That about does it for this video. If you've got any questions, feel free to send me an email. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch up with you in the next video.